Ask Me Anything, where you can ask me, a historian, History Hefner, in my element, in my smoking jacket, here in the Friendly Neighborhood History Studios, all about history, social studies, and social sciences. A topic, question, comment comes to your mind, drop it in the chat, and I'll be happy to answer it in a friendly, neighborly manner. I hope you are all having a really good day so far. A happy Saturday to all of you. We are going earlier than normal. Usually Fridays and Saturdays when we do Q&As here on YouTube, we go at 6 p.m. Eastern, but excuse me, I decided to go early for the sake of my international viewers who may be 7, 8, 10 hours ahead sometimes of where I am. And I'm not always very mindful of how late in the evening or early in the morning they're forced to watch the live streams because of how timely it is for me here in the United States. So I'm going early so that people are not up in all hours of the night consuming this information in order to help them go to sleep. So this is an early Saturday afternoon stream of the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel where you can ask me anything you'd like about history and social studies. We deliver it in a friendly, neighborly manner. And to promote my members only my members only video series, which will be about the Industrial Revolution. I have a background of Bristol, or Birmingham, one of the earliest cities in Great Britain that started industrializing. A members-only series will start with a couple of long-form videos, maybe one or two this week, discussing the different elements of the Industrial Revolution. I have a video available for everybody that discusses the overall impact of the Industrial Revolution, but if you want to learn about the different factors of it, the social, political, economic, factors of one of the world's greatest non-violent revolutions, one of the greatest movements in human history, one of the biggest changes in human history that has created the modern world and shaped it in the way it has become. You can learn all about that by becoming a member here at the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel here on YouTube. And you get all sorts of other bonuses and benefits as well. But thank you for joining us. Please like and subscribe. Harry is here. That's good to see him here, my moderator. Yes, I'm giving you guys an earlier start because of my international viewers like Harry, who's one of my moderators, who's in Great Britain, and my friends across the pond deserve an earlier start so they're not up all hours of the night trying to keep up with the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel. So instead of mega early, we decided to just have an earlier stream today. So for the next hour or so, I will be answering all of your questions about history and social studies. We went 90 minutes yesterday, a really, really long stream, but a really, really good one. 30 minutes over, as we normally do. Answering all the questions and such, and I'm glad, Emir, that you enjoy your membership because I enjoy giving them out. I enjoy people paying for them. Any money that you give to this channel helps the channel. We use it to improve the quality of the content, the technology, the equipment that we have here. I just ordered a new laptop, so I will be able to screencast again and do some things that I was doing in the summer that I really enjoyed until I had to get rid of that laptop, and now I've got a newer, better one, and I will be using that a lot on the channel starting as soon as this week. And yes, please check out my long-form videos. They drop every Monday and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern. I've been kind of inconsistent there, but my most recent one about the compilation of videos and shorts I did about British monarchs in the modern era dropped today, so please go watch that. And they have short-form content every day here on the channel. Join us for our live stream lecture tomorrow. You can vote on the topic today. Exclusively here on YouTube. On Monday, I will be live streaming on TikTok for the first time, probably about 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I think 8 p.m. in Great Britain, for instance. So this way, my European audiences and my Middle Eastern and Indian audiences will be able to see my content earlier, and they're not just coming in really late at night and really, really tired. They get a fresh, earlier start to their Friendly Neighborhood History content. So thank you for joining us here at the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel. If you like history and social studies, please subscribe. But I'm going to answer questions about history and social studies. Drop them in the chat, and I will be sure to answer them in a friendly, neighborly manner. What was the religion of Sweden before it was Christian? What we call paganism is a catch-all term that was used, Jaden, for different societal forms of worship that were common in barbarian lands, non-civilized lands, that usually inform some form of polytheistic worship. In this case, it was pagan Norse mythology that was predominant in Scandinavia and the Anglo-Saxon areas of England before Christianity really made its mark on the world. So many of them worship the Norse gods Odin, Thor, Freyja. By the way, Odin's Day, Wednesday, Thor's Day, and then Freya Day. By the way, that's how the days go because English is a derivative of the ancient Anglo-Saxon peoples, and they worship the Norse gods. So their impact is still felt, even though those religions were swallowed up and stomped out by Christianity. Who was Pseudo-Dionysius? Not sure. Hello, Nature View. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, you're in Emir. If you're in California, that's Pacific, so that's West Coast. So that's, I think it's like 10:30 over there, so it's early in the morning. Have you considered a nose job? No, probably need one. I'm not going to use your money to get a nose job, but I'm going to use your money to continue working on fixing my gaps in my teeth. Was is Thor and Odin Loki? Yes. How can you justify Christianity a true religion? I'm not. This isn't a religious channel. I talk about religion in the context of culture and history because it's extremely important. You can't tell the story of history without Christianity or any of the other religions for that matter. So I discuss these things uh, clearly and levelly, but I do not. But I don't share my own personal perspectives about it. And typically, I don't share my personal perspectives on almost any topic other than historical ones or ones that I think have a historical significance to them. But if you want a deeper analysis of a particular topic that is not directly historical, that's usually a super chat. Hello, Sunita. Thank you for joining us at the Friendly Neighbor History Channel, where we are discussing a members-only video series that will be coming out on the Industrial Revolution. So I'm here in Birmingham, one of the earliest centers of industrialization in the early 19th century in Great Britain, where the desire for textiles, the need for warm clothes in the colder winters, motivated them to create larger businesses that could produce them a lot more quickly and invent things such as, the spinning jinny and the mechanical loom. Hugh Hefner wants his robot. Well, this is history Hefner, so I'm not Hugh Hefner, but it's my smoking jacket inspired by the British who started wearing them after the Crimean War. What is your main viewer nationality in the Middle East? I've had people from Saudi Arabia. One of my longtime friendly neighborhood historians was from Iraq. He'd like to join us and come in here. California, the communist state by American standards, then again by American standards, subsidizing buses for pensioners would probably be communism. Okay, check out the Temple of Zeus organization to find out the truth behind reality. Hail Zeus. Okay, then. So that's Greek paganism. So, and by the way, I'm not using paganism as an insult. I'm simply saying that it is a religion that is typically defined as, it usually is polytheistic. It usually is primitive in the sense that it is connected to the earliest cultural and national identities of certain areas of the world, and it is non-Christian, especially in the West. How is Irish Celtic paganism connected to Halloween? You can watch my live stream lecture from a couple of weeks ago where I discussed the history of Halloween in great detail. But basically, Samhain was a celebration of was a Celtic celebration of the end of the year when spirits were supposedly closest to the earth, and that it becomes Halloween, and people would dress up in costumes to either show the spirits they were not afraid of them or to hide from them. And in order to appease the spirits, they would sometimes go and ask for gold or goods or food from people, and that's where you get trick-or-treating. Do you think the bad guys or the good guys won World War II? Well, I think there's course, the Great War, World War I for you. World War III would be World War II, which is what you're talking about. And I believe that, yes, indeed, the good guys did win that war. And yeah, I don't believe that, and the victors do usually write a lot of the history, but that doesn't mean that the victors are always bad or corruptible or suspicious. In this case, looking what the Nazis were doing and looking what the United States is doing, the United States is far from perfect, but the Nazis were far worse. Now, the Soviet Union is far closer to the Nazis and the Imperial Japanese in terms of terror and mistreatment of people. It's an interesting, there's a lot of hypotheticals. What if Stalin hadn't joined the Allies? What if the war had continued and it just transferred to Russia? What if the Soviet had been able to join the Axis? What if the Soviet Union hadn't fought in the war at all? There is some moral gray area, most of it added by the Soviet Union's involvement in the war because of how awful Stalin was. Yes. Remember to hit the like button, please. Yes, please. Even Israel is religious and rich. There's many countries that are religious and rich. And rich is relative. The vast majority of people in the United States who are poor are rich by world standards. Well, it's a Saturday over here in the United States. I don't know where you are, Weasel, but a very, very happy weekend to you. It's great to have you here at the Friendly Neighbor History Channel. Want to hear more about, yes, punch cards. I mean, timesheets are now are still used, but but digital timesheets exist. Birmingham is one of the earliest industrial centers, and you can watch my video, Weasel, if you want to learn more about it on the Industrial Revolution, but my members only are going to be getting the distinct videos. There's going to be one about the culture, the economic impact, the technological impact, the social impact. So I'm going to be covering the different impacts and changes of the Industrial Revolution and how it changed world history from various different angles, including social, cultural, economic, technological, political. The world wouldn't be what it is today without the Industrial Revolution, and mankind's development of technology in the last 2 centuries is exponentially greater than it was the previous 4 millennia before that, and mankind's development of technology over the last 35 years in the digital Industrial Revolution is exponential compared to the last 2 centuries of the Industrial Revolution before that. So if you really look at it, exponential growth of technology dwarfs the Industrial Revolution, dwarfs the thousands of years before that in just a couple of centuries. But the Digital Revolution dwarfs the Industrial Revolution in just a few decades. So I hate how the basketball team Celtics is pronounced. It's all because it's always messed up. Yep, it's Celtics, based on the Irish people's ancient barbarian forebears. By the way, barbarian does not mean necessarily uncivilized. To the Romans, they certainly were uncivilized, but barbarian was because they would go bar when they would fight. How long do people live that lived in the area of the photo behind you? Life expectancy was getting better during the Industrial Revolution, even with environmental concerns, such as black lung for miners and things like that. People would be, I mean, there were environmental, physical, and health hazards in industrial centers and areas, but lifespans were greater in the 19th century than they were in the 18th century. People would live into their 50s, 60s, and sometimes, if they were lucky, into their 70s. Is there some truth that Israel is the real winner of World War II? A little bit, in the sense that they got to become a nation, but when you consider the fact that 6 million Jews, the predominant people of Israel, were killed in the Holocaust, they are not. Margaret, hello, good to have you here. Shout out to Yoder in the church for this new... okay, have fun with that, Ethan. To be honest, some of your jargons are too complex for us mere plebes and Pat. We just, please in the chat, we just pretend to understand. Well, if you need me to dumb down something for you, Autumn Love, just let me know. Victors don't write history, the literate do. And the literate are the victors, and often, many times. And the literate victors write it, if you want to be very specific, RQB. Let me see here. Nice smoking jacket, Hugh Hefner. Well, it's History Hefner because I'm talking about history. But yeah, it's been a gift from a longtime fan of the channel. So very, very nice one. You've been to Napoleon's house in New Orleans? No, stop asking that every day you're here. Woa, good to see you as always. Considering the British people lived in pretty much absolute poverty, it is incredible that the British people are also twice as wealthy on average as Europeans. Yes, don't worry, they'll be living in abject poverty again, though, with your economic decline. Very, very precipitous. Let me see here. How are the bunnies? Well, the only bunny we have here is Simon the bunny, and we haven't seen him in a little while, but he watches the channel all the time, and he sends his best to all of you guys. So, yeah. Why didn't Frodo just fly on the eagles to Mordor? Well, I love The Lord of the Rings. I've actually... one of my favorite things to do outside of history is to read and to analyze literature and analyze the humanities. It's something that I'm doing here, but I do it a lot in my own personal life. I'm watching a lot of In Deep Geek videos. Check out that channel. When you're done watching all of my content, go and check out In Deep Geek. He's got a great channel where he analyzes The Lord of the Rings and talks about that. And the whole thing is that the eagles probably would have been detected and been taken down by Sauron's many forces, including the Nazgul, the Ringwraiths, who rode on those things too. So there you go. There's a little bit of Lord of the Rings lore for you guys. Also, the whole mission was supposed to be secretive, and that's why there's so much subterfuge and manipulation in Lord of the Rings. I didn't even recognize it when I watched the films. So now, more time passed, do you think people will try to disconnect from technology? There's always this question. If you look at the Industrial Revolution, obviously my background makes you think to it. You can watch my video for free on the Industrial Revolution, but know that a members-only series of videos is going to be coming out very soon about various different aspects of the Industrial Revolution. The Luddites were a group of people who, at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, feared the destruction of their ways of life. And the Amish and the Shakers were peoples like this too. These kinds of people have existed ever since the creation of the Industrial Era, believing that it would be the doom of humanity. It would not make life easier. It would make people more lazy and depraved. And that argument has existed, and now AI is getting the punching side of that. So people might disconnect more and more from it, especially as tech addiction becomes a real thing. Technology is no longer just used to make money. It's used to entertain us and keep us on dopamine hits all the time, which obviously I'm not going to go against technology because I'm using technology to communicate with you and answer your question. And obviously, the more technology that is used, hopefully the more Friendly Neighborhood history content is consumed here on Patreon, on my Substack blog, and other places as well. But yes, I believe people will probably disconnect from it more and more. Lord of the Rings is for children. No, The Hobbit was for children. Our economic decline, we're not in economic decline, we're just in economic stagnation, which is another way of saying decline. You expand or you die. Think of your Romans. If we were in economic decline, we would be in a recession, which we're not. Well, you are receding compared to the Polish, so there's that. Would you visit Victorian England? Absolutely. Fascinating place, incredible era, late 19th century. Not only do you have the development of the middle class, you have some of the kinks and problems of the Industrial Revolution worked out by the late 19th century. You also have a society that is extraordinarily powerful, extraordinarily wealthy. There's centers for art, music, literature all over the place. It's London, and many of these places are some of the most metropolitan and cosmopolitan areas in the world. Well-developed, artsy, all of those things that I really enjoy. UK government is an abomination. Well, don't tell that to Harry. Why are you disrespectful to the UK? I love the UK. It's just that one of my moderators is absolutely obsessed with the UK and doesn't know when to quit, so I have to put him in his place. And of course, if you were here earlier, Triple J, you know that my first one of the first things I said is go watch my long form video I dropped on the British monarchs. I'm obviously a fan of the British. I talked about wanting to live in Victorian England. So, do you think the Great Fire of London worked for or against the Black Plague? Well, it's centuries after the Black Death. The plague was still episodically around. 1665, it really just consumed most of Charles II's reign trying to rebuild England. I'm not sure if there's a parallel or overlap between them that much. Who won the 7 Years' War? The 7 Years' War, by the way, is what I consider to be World War I, and against all odds, the Prussians were able to withstand because the Russians pulled out of the war, and the British were able to, with their colonial allies, able to defeat the French and their Indian allies. The Portuguese won against the Spanish. The Indians were heavily defeated thanks to Robert Clive and the other Brits. Basically, the British and the Prussians defeated the French, Austrians, and Russians and their different native allies. Let me see. He isn't, but I am very pro. So yeah. Do you think the Jews will repeat their attack on 9/11? No. No, I do not think that because they didn't have a 9/11 to begin with. They had nothing to do with 9/11. So thank you for once again showing that no matter who comes onto this channel, I'm going to run into anti-Semites and groypers who are more obsessed with Israel than Jews themselves. Kurdistan, what's your thoughts? Well, it'd be Well, I had someone from Kurdistan here just yesterday, and I think it's a fascinating culture. It's developed kind of as a not even semi-autonomous, but there's definitely an autonomy to the Kurdish people where they view themselves as fully independent, as deserving of independence of their lands. And I think that if Israel is going to have their own country and the Palestinians are going to have their own country, Kurdistan does need to exist. There's a lot more cultural diversity and reliability in Kurdistan than there is in other parts of the Middle East, and they have been constantly the whipping post for a lot of dictators and radicals in the Middle East for a long time. So... does Poland have high GDP? Poland is actually emerging economically stronger. After a long period of economic decline, Poland actually, again, in the next 10 years, will likely overtake Great Britain in terms of GDP. Let me see. Compare how many Jewish people died in World War II to Israel's current Jewish population, totaling approximately 7.2 million people. So barely more. Overall, about a 25% increase comparatively. And of course, there are many Jews in the United States and in Europe and in other places of the world. All you need now is a smoking pipe and a monocle. Well, I do smoke and I do have a pipe, but I don't smoke in the studio usually. It would just smell awful all the time. Would you rather talk to Charles Dickens or Lewis Carroll? Charles Dickens, because he's not a creep. I would want Dickens' actual feelings and thoughts on the economic situation that he lived in, because everybody wants to say Dickens was a socialist, which is nonsense, which I think is nonsensical, but yeah. I would want to talk economics with Charles Dickens and social life with Charles Dickens. But of course, there's also George Eliot. There's so many great writers of the Victorian era, and Tennyson would probably be my favorite to talk to because I love his poetry. But of course, assuming I could ever actually meet these people. Hey, kind of like how Russiagate stole the first 22 months of President Trump's first term. Yeah, I guess. You see Nuremberg? No, but I need to see it. It's good to see you, Triglyceride. This is the Friendly Neighborhood History channel where we do history in a friendly neighborly manner. Verdura. Thank you for joining us from Sri Lanka. What time is it over there? Our education system from the Prussians, as in the school system and the examination system from the Chinese. That's true. The exams for the civil bureaucrats in Confucian China, which was used, really started with the Han and was really doubled down on by the Tang dynasties. And we've got people from the Philippines. What are your favorite historical movies or series? I, Claudius, if I'm looking at ancient history, is an incredible series. I know it's 50 years old, but it really holds up well, and it does an excellent job of discussing the legend, the myth, and the history of the Julio-Claudians. That's an incredible series. Historical movie, I got to go with Braveheart or Schindler's List because they're both extremely well done. They're not extremely accurate, but they are both very, very well done. Most obscure history fact of Lincoln, England. Don't know one off the top of my head, Peter. You might know more than I do on that one. Let me see here. Good German accent, Crow. Rami Malek characters book that failed. Is it real? I'll have to watch it. You've got to stop saying this because it isn't true. All Poland is going to do is overtake the United Kingdom nominal per capita GDP, not nominal GDP overall. So they're going to have per capita more money than the Brits. So they're going to be richer per capita, which is really the way it breaks down, meaning that if Britain and, meaning proportionally, if Britain and Poland had the same population, now I'm teaching economics to you, that Britain, the Polish would be richer. That makes sense. So it's actually worse than the nominal GDP. Of course, Britain will be outputting more. Britain has a larger population. To judge the future of what man is capable, just look at what man has done in the past. Absolutely. That's why we do history. It's one of the many reasons we do history. Hey Arnav, great to see you. Which state in the U.S. will secede from the Union first? It's always going to be Texas, is my answer. Regardless of what Poland is doing, I'd rather live in this country than the U.S., which is a mess. It's not about the U.S. I don't know why you have to bring up a non sequitur. I'm just saying that Britain is not in a is in a state of peril economically, as is many places in Europe. You always are Britain is great, and the United States sucks because, and everybody else sucks because they're not British. That isn't true. That isn't, you guys are falling behind the Polish, which is laughable in historical context compared to what Poland has been and what Britain used to be. I know a little bit about Burkina Faso. I do cover African history here, AC. 12:08 a.m. and you're joining us. Well, thank you for joining us. Have you ever seen the movie The Man from the Earth? It might be right up your alley. I'll have to. Thank you for subscribing. Sri Lanka, what the British called Ceylon, fought for a long time for its independence from India and from the British. Yes, well, Weaselby, you'll have to become a member to get the full access to those videos, but go and watch the long-form video on the Industrial Revolution. I have plenty of short videos that I drop every day on this channel, and many of them are about the Industrial Revolution, so I talk about it quite a bit. Yeah, I don't like talking about politics. People want to bring up politics. They want to bring up geopolitical issues. If you want my political analysis, give a super chat. That's what I always say. If you had to send a tiny message to the whole world, what would it be? Love history. It's what I sign off with all the time. You won't believe what doors will open for you if you actually do seek to love history. You could look into the history of how Japan was matriarchal in the past, with Shinto being dominated by powerful women, shamans with direct connections to the divine, of course. I'm out Treso. I've heard about this, Hung Bunny, but the truth of the matter is it wasn't like that in the imperial period, even when the emperors had power, and it certainly wasn't this by the time we get to the daimyos and the shogunates. Do you think the UK and USA should continue their special relationship? Yes, I love the UK, I love the Brits, and I think the United States and Britain have the most obvious compatriot relationship in the world, other than maybe Britain and Canada. The United States is the Angloid country. It was founded by Angloids, originally for Angloids. It makes total sense. The vast majority of immigrants in American history, especially during the first couple centuries, proportionally per capita, were indeed were Angloids, Scots and Irish. Those aren't Angloids, but from the UK, from Britain, too. So you got cheap booze. I wish. The original goddess and empress of a nation. Do you think the UK? Okay, I already answered that. Per capita means more. However, GDP has never been a good indication of a thriving economy. That's not true. AC. Per capita of course there are other, it's like the SATs. There are other metrics to measure intelligence, but the SAT tends to be the best. GDP is a good metric for understanding the wealth of a nation at the current place. There are other factors, of course, as well. In the current royal family, the Japan biologically records back to the goddess. Well, yes, it's the kami. It's the spirit, K-A-M-I, the spirit that refers back to the deity. The Japanese believe their emperor was a deity for a long time, which is one of the reasons he held no power but complete ceremonial impact, just like I was talking about with the British monarchs on my live stream lecture last Sunday. You can join our live stream lecture tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern and vote here on YouTube, exclusively on YouTube today, what you want me to talk about. And Emir, I thank you for being here for history. I really appreciate you here. It's always great to have your support. Do you think Greece can recover like Poland? Greece, I don't know. I'm not sure. Greece has really struggled the last 15 years. I'm not Greek, but I do love Greek history. I talk about the ancient Greeks a lot and the emergence of the modern Grecian state in 1832. I love steel history we had here. Well, the Bessemer press is one of the big inventions I will be discussing in my Industrial Revolution videos. So that made it a lot easier for them to produce steel. We need to rebuild the Western world that's being taken over. By who and how? I'm English and we are on the brink of war. Well, tell Harry that because he doesn't think it. Well, you can think your capitalist bodies, the conservatives, for our stupendous decline. You're just pushing back the goalposts. I'm not arguing that the conservatives are right or that the capitalists are right. I'm not necessarily a capitalist. I'm simply just saying that Britain is in decline, and so you can't just tout Britain all the time. 500,000 Poles were trained here. Work hard in UK and then do your dutiful work abroad. Sound about right. Of course, the British have many amazing capabilities and possibilities for people. I'm not saying anything bad about the British. I'm saying that the British aren't the end-all be-all. Napoleon was gay. No. Alexander the Great certainly was, though. Burkina Faso is currently implementing a lot of cool public policy initiatives. Bet it would interest you. Sure. Yes, Ceylon does have an extensive history. I don't think the Mughal Empire, the Indian empires, and the subcontinent ever got around to conquering Ceylon. So Ceylon remained distinct from India until the Brits. I think the Brits are the ones who put them under the company, the East India Company, and then under the empire. You've earned a subscription. Thank you, Jimmy. I really appreciate that. Japanese Imperial Army was disgusting. They still never admitted to the genocide of up to 20 million. That's true, and we don't focus on it because we don't look at Japan's actions during the war as much, partially out of racist ideas from that era, but also because the focus is always on the Western side of things, and the Holocaust obviously gains a lot of prominence because of intentional genocide. But what happened at Nanjing, what happened at Bataan, the Japanese were absolutely awful and guilty of horrible war crimes. That's why Hideki Tojo, the minister of the war, was executed after the war. The Japanese probably deserve their own Nuremberg. I want to go on a vacation to recover, and look at Unit 731 that they did to the Chinese prisoners of war. It's awful. It's far worse than what any Germans did to their prisoners of war. I went to go on a vacation to recover on a British overseas territory, Anguilla, Montreat, or the other one. What? Was the 13 colonies of America basically British migrants in America? So, like, conservatives say founding of America, does it specifically British American, not French, American, or Spanish? Well, the French and Spanish helped the Americans win the war, but indeed, the British were the ones, English people specifically, who originally populated the United States, and later you get Brits, as in Scots, and the Irish aren't British, but the Irish came over. So, the vast majority of people in the United States at the founding were indeed from the UK. And then you eventually get Germans, Swedes, Scandinavians, and then later Italians, Jews, Poles. A lot of Irish came over in the middle of the 19th century because of the potato famine, because the British starved them. Why do so many Americans say that Israel is the greatest ally? This is a snub to the actual good allies like Britain and Japan. Israel is, this is the Israel can do no wrong side, which is wrong on many historical levels. But the base, whereas I usually in this channel will run into the Israel can never do it, Jews in particular in Israel can never do anything right. But the real truth of the matter is, when you ask about the greatest ally, Gaihan, Britain and Japan are indeed some of America's greatest allies, although Japan, not as much. I wouldn't put them. Britain is has been a great ally of the United States. Japan has become a great ally of the United States. And of course you have Canada. They are all precipitously better as allies than Israel. Not only proportional, not only in real time, but proportionally as well. But Israel is an outpost in the Middle East. It's the only real democracy in the Middle East. It is the most like the West in the Middle East. It stood as a bulwark against Soviet designs for communist revolution in the Middle East during the Cold War. So there's a lot of that going on. At the same time, it is also now it stands as a bulwark in many ways against radical Islam, which became the United States' biggest concern, especially after 9/11. So in many ways, Israel is a satellite of the United States in the Middle East, where the United States wants hegemonic influence and doesn't really have it. Now, what has happened recently is the United States is using Saudi Arabia to gain a little bit more hegemonic leeway into the Middle East that they didn't have before, basically continuing to manipulate the divide between Sunnis and Shiites. Do you think Ireland will ever reunite? No. Mel Gibson is free from with history. Yeah, he's pretty. They didn't have kilts. Shuriken, one of my longtime friendly neighborhood historians, can explain to you they didn't have kilts. But it's an incredible movie. It's just so well done. Did Stalin do it? Did Stalin do what? Let me see. Right. I meant to say the religion of Japan was matriarchal Shinto specifically, and over time that changed. You can see the remnants of that in modern day Miko, the shrine maids. Yes, the women, the maids, the maidens, that's all part of ancient Shintoism, and it's a very, very egalitarian religion. Was it possible to prevent World War II? World War III is what I call it, but I don't know if the British and French could have stood up to Hitler before he had gotten full power, and before the Anschluss. I don't know if they could have mobilized their forces, invaded the Rhineland, or something like that. It's possible. I think there would have been a war, but I may not have been on the scale that it was. Are Japanese gods similar to the Hindu and Greek gods? A little bit. Ancestor worship is a far bigger part of it than in the Hindu or Greek mythologies. Shinto is has a lot of ancestor worship in it, but it's also, there's a pantheistic nature to it that is a little bit closer to Hinduism than it is to the Greek mythology, where basically the different spirits Different spirits occupy different spheres of a world and are different forms of gods, and the emperor is one of these such spirits. So, the Queen of England was a failure as the head of the Church of England. Okay, thanks for your opinion. Mufiz, hello. I'm teaching history right now, honk. Per capita matters more because overall GDP is heavily inflated by the wealth of the elite. If an economy where percent is help, that's true. So that's real GDP versus per capita. So in that case, it's even worse for the British with Harry's argument. Please be correct. It's Britain Stannis, not British. Okay. No, Alexander the Great slander, please. So many people want to apply modern cultural relativism and call him gay. That is slander. I'm not slandering someone by calling them a homosexual. There's a reason why they got slapped with the sun twice. Okay. There was no worse or better in World War II. This is just brainwashing was all terrible and comparing is fruitless. No, I sleep better at night knowing that Hitler is the worst and the Japanese were bad. I'm not going to, I'm a historian. I deal with things. I look at things from their context. I look at people's perspectives, even those of Hitler and Mussolini. But no, I don't buy into the Jerry Doyle, Tucker Carlson nonsense that there is no good guys or bad guys. If you want to say that the United States did horrible things, the British did horrible things, and the French and the Russians did horrible things, that's absolutely true. You can't get away from it. But there is definitely a difference, to be sure. Doesn't Indonesia exist? Of course it does. Nanjing pales in comparison to what the Allies did to German women, millions. You're looking at what the Soviets did. It's not as much, but there was definitely ethnic cleansing, and basically the Soviets killed the Germans at will as retribution for the war. Yes, that is true. We don't talk about that as much as we should, and the United States did a little bit of that as well, but that's not fully true. Millions of Chinese people were killed and brutalized by the Japanese. And the Japanese did horrible atrocities to the Filipinos. The Japanese did terrible things to the Americans. And the Americans did terrible things to the Japanese. Look at the fire bombings and, of course, look at Nagasaki and Hiroshima. So you can look at different examples of it. War is always bad. What is the moral cause of a war? What are the reasons you are fighting? And what is the end goal? And what happens when you win as opposed to what could happen if your enemy wins? That is some of the things we need to take into account. Why did the French think the British were mad for wanting to keep fighting Germany? They didn't want Churchill to dominate their political affairs. Reynaud was his name? Reynaud was willing to let it go. Churchill wasn't. I think it's safe to say the original American stock were British, French, German, and adjacent. Later developments of Italian and Irish Scots group. That's true. Because the French are useless. See, this is nonsensical. The French were not useless. The French held the line at Dunkirk while the British were running away. That's the actual history. French soldiers were fighting the Germans as the British just ditched them. I would argue that they are subservient states and not allies. However, I think your analysis is more on point than others. Thank you. If you want, and if you want to talk about a former European superpower in decline, Jesus Christ is France in decline. You were swearing. You weren't referring to Jesus Christ, the actual person. France is indeed in decline, but a lot of Europe is in decline. A lot of the West is in decline. Do you support Israel? I support truth. I support history. I am not on this channel to make political points about Israel. And the only reason I ever talk about it is because people come on and ask me about it historically. I have done one live stream lecture about the topic of Israel, and I have done one live stream lecture about the modern Middle East. I do not talk about this stuff all the time. People want my opinion about it all the time. If people ask me, am I pro-Palestinian? Yes. Am I pro-Israeli? Yes. Make it work is my basic advice. I'm not going to get into the geopolitics beyond that. If you want my political analysis of the whole darn situation, which is just crazy and convoluted, then give a super chat. But from I will talk about the history if you want to know the history of those things, but I don't want to talk about it in perpetuity. Give a super chat if you want me to actually get into the current conflict. But I try not to give my opinions. I try to look at the facts from what I know it. But Americans try to act like they are morally superior to Japan when you can see that they did to the German people, Vietnamese people in the Middle East. The United States did plenty of horrible things in all of those situations, far from perfect, far more superior morally than Germany and Japan, especially in the context of that war alone. Let me see. You see that smoke behind you, that smoke from the burning of aliens in a furnace. Yes, very hilarious, but it's the fires of industry. Why is Kashmir's a politically unstable region? Because it is claimed by both the Pakistanis and the Indians, and they have been fighting over it. They fought a war in the 70s over it. In fact, the first war ever fought between two fully nuclear-capable countries that we knew were fully nuclear-capable was India and Pakistan in just a few months ago. And that war didn't really go anywhere. Stalin locked up Nazis and squashed neo-Nazi programs in pogroms in Russia. That's true, but Stalin also perpetuated pogroms. I'm worried as I hear factions of the native population want to smuggle in arms, paging on Oliver Cromwell. Hilarious. Yeah. What was the sect of Protestants when America was founded? Was it Anglican, Lutheran, Calvinist, Baptist? The founding fathers were deists, but was the majority? No, a majority were not deists. Even of the founding fathers were not deists. Most of the people in the colonies were Christian. Maryland was the Catholic colony. But there were still large sections of Christians. There were established churches. This is why there's no the establishment clause exists. It means that an individual state cannot establish a state religion, namely a Christian denomination, and force the people to either follow it or pay taxes. So if you didn't want to be an Anglican in Virginia, you had to pay taxes in colonial Virginia. If you wanted to worship God in a different way, Catholics often face the brunt of this, for example. However, basically, they established no state religion. Some of the founding fathers were deists, some of them were Christians, some of them were Catholics. It's all over the place. Where you get your dressing gown from? What brand and model is it? I forget the name of the brand. I'd have to look at the sticker, but it's a really nice smoking jacket. I'll have to find out the brand and let you know later. But it is based on the British, who after the Crimean War would bring back these smoking jackets and wear them, officer corps, after the Crimean War, and they would smoke Turkish tobacco because they had helped the Ottoman Turks defeat the Russians. And in one of the few direct wars between the Europeans during the 19th century after Napoleon, and they would wear these and smoke in them and cover their clothes from getting the smell all over it. Really fun stuff. Why does America want influence in the Middle East when they have been involved in the Middle East for so long and they just pull out and leave a mess instead of making a real change? Because they think they'll get it right this time. What caused the Spanish-American War? Originally, it was the sinking of the Maine, which the United States blamed on the Spanish. The Spanish may have blown it up. It's most likely their own failure. But if we look back, the manipulation of the media, the yellow journalism of Joseph Pulitzer, who through his manipulation eventually had a prize for journalism for writing named after him, and William Randolph Hearst, who put pressure on the United States to build to have imperial designs like that of the French, British, and Germans, which eventually brought the United States under both the pressure for glory and the pressure for retribution to go to war with Spain. To heck with the facts. What caused? Yeah, so there you go. It's history, Hefner. Rachel, but yes, keep reading, Bub. Homosexuality is a slander. Calling somebody gay is not a slander on this channel. I am simply saying that a historical figure happened to be gay. You can walk around in your homophobia as much as you want, but understand that LGBTQ people existed all throughout history and have had an impact on history. It's just the facts. Do world need more powerful organization than UN to stop possibility of World War III and climate change? I don't know if, well, for me it'd be World War IV. I don't know if the UN has any power at all, and I don't know if another supranational organization will necessarily have the power to do that. So let me see. Thank you for joining us from India. I really appreciate the love. Because Jammu Kashmir people are different than others, that's true. They're a liminal place between India and Pakistan, which never used to exist, obviously. The Indian subcontinent was united for a very long time. Soviet Union is Russia during the 20th century, and other places too. In reference to Pearl Harbor, intelligence agencies have recovered warnings of an impending Japanese attack with some decoded Japanese messages indicating an attack was imminent. It's true. They weren't, I think they just didn't take it seriously. I really do. Can you do a deep history dive of Hugh Hefner? I could do a video on Hugh Hefner, maybe. That'd be fun. But yeah, obviously created Playboy, made it a little bit more dolled up and fancy than the usual smut magazine, and of course created this image of a Playboy, of a guy who enjoys his life and has fun and has beautiful women at his disposal all the time, but is also extremely business savvy with business, extremely wealthy and influential culturally and societally. Thank you for your respect from London, Samuel. When the Warsaw Rebellion happened. Are you talking about the ghetto uprising, the Warsaw Uprising? In 1943, basically, a bunch of people who were being repressed, many of them Jews, rose up in Warsaw against the Nazi occupation. It was crushed, and this led to even further, more swift violence against Slavs and Jews who were seen as undesirables by the Nazi regime. Japanese still never admitted to comfort women from China or Japan. True. Was eugenics practiced in Germany, United States, India, Britain during the 20th century? There was ideas of it, basically this idea that there are superior races, their technology and civilization has made them superior, and so some are better than others. And the Nazis certainly took this and ran with it. And you want to breed people who are from better civilizations because they have good genes, good hereditary traits, which they believed was responsible for the better society. So the better societies were better because those people had those genes. This is the cornerstone of Nazi Ubermensch ideology and a bunch of other stuff too. And this isn't advertising for, I'm not paid by Starbucks, I am just drinking Starbucks, so it's free advertising for them. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already as I take a sip of coffee. And yes, Harry's absolutely right. Truman would have been a criminal not to use the A-bomb, believe it or not, especially to the Japanese, who would have suffered much greater had there been either a starvation of the island or an invasion. War retaliation is sometimes necessary. Yes, you look like you're hungry for getting it. What the heck? Sure, why not? But thank you for coming onto my channel and proving that you have a disgusting mind. French maintained resistance throughout their Nazi occupation. Chat. They didn't lay down arms. Yeah, everyone was part of the resistance. Yes, of course they had a resistance. It wasn't effective. Wouldn't have ever gotten anywhere without the British and the Americans. Americans are hypocrites. Japan lost the war knowing that they dropped the bomb. Knowing that they dropped two and they had one more. What is your least favorite culture? I don't have a least favorite culture. Every culture I learn about, every historical area of the world that I study, I tend to love a lot about it. Do you like Romania? Yes. Dacia. One of the only countries in the eastern part of Europe that has a Roman Latin-based language because the Romans conquered it under Trajan. What do you think about historical materialism? Is that Marxist materialism, the materialist dialectic? I don't know what you mean by historical materialism other than that. Is Israel doing genocide? No. And are you seriously trying to argue that America isn't in decline? I've never said America isn't in decline. I mentioned that earlier. I literally said it. Why are people saying the West is falling? There's many different reasons why people think that, but there seems to be a consensus, depending on, regardless of your political perspectives, that things are in decline throughout the Western world. That birth rates are lower, economies are more stagnant, cost of living and affordability is high, inflation is high, things like that. There's this sense of a loss of culture, a loss of homeland, a loss of patriotism. People are less zealous for their countries. People are far more critical than they've ever been in the past. These alone are not necessarily bad things, but they are indicators of some sort of what people believe is a cultural decline, particularly people on the right. But people on the left are also aware of cultural decline, and they believe that the cause for it is capitalism and things like that. France is the cause of World War II. If they hadn't starved German kids on purpose for 20 years, they wouldn't have created a Germany. No, that's not true. When you believe that, that's Nazi propaganda. The Versailles argument, the argument that the war really never ended and Versailles was so cruel to the Germans, and that's why the Nazis rose to power, and the Nazis were just retaliating. No, that's nonsense. Germany in 1928 was stable. Very stable. It was the Great Depression that brought Germany into instability. And yes, the Nazis appealed back to what they believe was the prejudicial way that Versailles had treated the Germans at the end of the Great War. But the truth of the matter is that the Nazis were liars. They were not wanting to take any responsibility for themselves. I mean, the entire Southeast Asia was annihilated and dominated by Japan for over 50 years, but I think that's the talking point that matters, not like the small events by a certain group. True. The Japanese were pretty horrific in many areas. But so is every single civilization, especially when it gets great amounts of power. Says the West is in decline, refuses to talk politics. That's such a bad argument. And I shouldn't expect more from somebody named Pimpin Toads. But I'm surprised you're not 6'7" at the end of your numbers there. But the truth of the matter is, when I say the West is in decline, I'm talking about a cultural consensus based on people comparing this to the good old days, which as a historian I can tell you there is no such thing. But I'm not going to talk about politics. I can talk about a political issue if you give me a super chat, and if you ask a specific question that actually allows me to discuss a particular issue. This is a history channel. I'm going to focus mainly on the history. If other social sciences get brought up, I can talk about it, but I'm not going to go into great detail unless I get some sort of remuneration for it. Sorry. All combating sides commit horrific acts. Yes, some more than others, though. And more Germans were killed than Americans. That doesn't make the Germans morally superior. Sometimes more victims are on one side, even though that side is more evil. Pakistan actually made nuclear weapons in a cave. That's interesting. I didn't know that. France fought for 6 weeks. Good for them. They did 6 weeks of running away while British did 6 years. I think we win. That's really, really bad history. Like actually shockingly bad. How different would America be if Buddhism was the core religion than it was founded on? Interesting. America was founded on a general understanding, and I have to move because I'm at 1% battery. But America was generally founded on what's called Judeo-Christian principles. I'm not saying that America is a Christian nation now. It was certainly a Christian nation when it was founded in the 1770s. But America wasn't. It would be interesting. Many of the ethical and moral teachings of the religions are indeed quite similar, but there's no unifying sense of exclusionism in Buddhism, where you have There's no exclusivism in Buddhism, where you have to believe this or else. So who knows what that would have done? Perhaps it would have created a more relativistic society, or a more but it also probably would have been a more tolerant one. Can you say happy birthday to my friend? No. Do you know? No. Let me see here. What's your opinion on the history of deep politics in the U.S. and Peter Dale Scott's analysis more broadly? Don't know his analysis. A lot of people think that there's a deep state running things and have run things for a long time. There's probably a lot of people in power who want to hold on to that power and want all sorts of different, and work in all sorts of different shady ways to achieve that. Do you think Shakespeare was just a guy, or do you believe any conspiracies? No, I believe he was a guy. Yes, let me see. So Harry is saying, this I do find funny, and I do want to address it. It also doesn't help that the U.S. is behaving like an 1800s colonial power, which is fascinating, because if you want an 1800s colonial power, this is the same Harry who constantly talks about how great the British Empire was. Talk about it. So you don't like the U.S. behaving like an 1800s colonial power, which bullies its way to get what it wants, but you constantly plays a society that did exactly that in the 19th century, called the British Empire. What's your favorite period of history and why? I love 19th, 18th century, and 20th century Europe, Russia in particular. Yeah, South Africa is the only country to give up nuclear weapons. We know that. Thank you for sharing. How long would it take to travel from Europe to America during the early 1700s? A few weeks by ship. Maybe even a month or two. Why is Paul considered a historical person when we literally don't have any writings of him preserved? Are you talking about St. Paul? Well, most people believe that there was a St. Paul who was persecuted by the Romans. The Romans write about him. The Romans write about the early Christians being persecuted. And the Romans have this understanding of there being Christian leaders. Paul is one of those leaders that is identified by the New Testament. And the New Testament, most of the writings of St. Paul and the New Testament are written within a century of the death of Jesus of Nazareth. So there's pretty good historical implication that Paul did in fact live, and then and then the Christians believe he was executed by Nero. Most of this is codified. It's a tradition that's later codified by the writer Eusebius. To be fair, many ancient histories are indeed traditions that are passed down orally through the centuries and are later written down. So it's not like the Christians were doing something unique here or uniquely bad. But Eusebius, the church historian in the 4th century, writing under the freer system. Okay, can anyone hear me? Am I still buffering? I didn't even know that I was buffering. I was trying to catch up with the chat. My phone is not dead. Can anyone hear me? Can everyone see or hear me now? Okay, yeah, good. I'm glad I'm back. Thank you so much. I was just answering about, I don't know what the last thing you heard me say was. A deep state, I'm going to pick up from Rodolfo. Oh, someone's... Okay, hopefully I'm coming in now. A deep state is a part of the government that is secreted and is in secrecy and shadow, and basically doesn't is not responsible or held accountable, and works with other different parts of the state as well as other nations to achieve whatever they want. Islamic Muslims need to be removed from the United States or assimilate. That's extremely Islamophobic, so that's ridiculous. Let me see here. Where did you get that China is more technologically advanced than the U.S. military? Well, yeah, Harry just hating the United States because he wants Britain to look good, and he has to glaze countries that he doesn't want to glaze because he listens to what The Guardian says about Donald Trump and the Americans, and he also hates the United States because he has to love the British. No, China is not catching up. They have lied for decades. I don't know if China isn't caught up necessarily. I think China is pretty has a lot of technological and military prowess. Some of it might be smoke and mirrors and exaggeration. Some of the United States' power is exaggeratory. But China is still behind the United States in several different rungs, especially militarily. Yeah. Let me see here. If Germany had kept their peace agreement with Russia, would Germany have won World War II, World War III? It's World War III, by the way, Steve. If Russia had conquered Finland, would Germany have attacked Russia? Winter War, which I call Cold War. Yeah, fair. The Winter War, nobody talks about. Finland repelled a Soviet invasion. Stalin thought he could basically bully the Finnish while the British and the French were fighting against the Germans in 1940, 1942. The Finns actually held their own. Germany probably would have attacked Russia. Yeah, and if Hitler had kept his peace agreement, he probably would have been able to get Britain to submit. So yes. It's not a political take. I'm not giving political takes. There's plenty of history here. I gave political takes when I answered people asking political questions. I didn't start off by talking about anything political, and the only reason I grazed any of it was because people were asking questions. So, yeah, that's very disingenuous. Do you like Dan Brown books and his take on history and mystery, often involving secret organizations and religious themes? Speak of the deep state. That's definitely what Dan Brown is doing. He's an interesting guy. Very, very knowledgeable. Do you think BC should be BC or do you accept BCE? I do BC AD, and it's not because I'm not politically correct. It's not because I'm not inclusive. BC and AD are obviously Christian terms. The Christian church developed the Gregorian calendar, which is the most accurate calendar in the world. If you don't believe me, listen to Neil deGrasse Tyson, who is a notorious skeptic when it comes to religion. He believes we should use BC and AD. The reason I believe it is because BCE and CE are still based on the same exact arbitrariness of the birth of Jesus of Nazareth. So until they can come up with another system and another nomenclature based on something else, I think BC and AD are more traditional, more historically accurate, and are based on a calendar that has been one of the greatest calendars in human history. Do you think Russia will attack Poland like they used to? No. And yes, thank you for bringing that up. The Russians attacked Poland many times, including after the Nazis. The Nazis divided up Poland with the Soviets. What would you like to eat during the Middle Ages? I want mutton. I want to see what mutton is like and how tough it is. Do you usually only just go live? No, I have long-form videos that drop usually twice a week, or at least I try to get them out twice a week. I have a series of long-form videos I'm going to be releasing to members only about the Industrial Revolution. I'm also doing a long-form series for everybody about the Supreme Court. You can go check out all of that, George W. Bush. And also I have short-form videos every day. No matter what, the British would never have gone into Hitler's, that's a fact. Well, with the United States, they got there. Should Australia remove Britain flag from their flag? No, they have close relations with the British. They're a Commonwealth. They're part of the Angloid sphere, which are countries that the British founded that remained white majority, or colonized, I should say. They didn't find them. They colonized them. Have you ever heard of the errors of Russia? No, but it's good to see you, Corn Plum. And yes, Russia has made many errors, and I can talk a lot about them. Can North Korea be liberated by the people of North Korea? How Syria got rid of Bashar Assad, or how Nepal overthrew their government? They don't have enough autonomy to get there. It's probably going to be regime change if that ever happens. Or maybe the death of Kim Jong-un. I don't know. Let me see here. Yeah, before Christ and Anno Domini are perfectly fine with me. I know that they're religiously partisan, but because the church determines the calendar, that's one of the reasons, but also because BCE and CE still base it on Christ and his birth, I think that it makes sense to use BC and AD. Do you think the Scandinavian believed in Norse mythology harder, or do you think the Greek people believed in their Greek myth harder? Which believed in their mythology stronger or equal? They both believed in it. Many of their people probably just accepted it just as a bunch of legends and stories to teach moral lessons and values, which is the way Socrates and the Greek philosophers understood it. There was a sense the Norse believed in it a little bit more realistically. That there was a sense that among educated and higher class Greeks, these were legends and stories that helped them understand the world around them. They were not to be taken as literal. That's how Socrates interpreted it. It's not difficult to get mutton. It's goat meat. And no, it's not tough. It's less tough than lamb. There you go. But I want to see what it would look like in a medieval village eating that at a long wooden table. Yeah, this isn't a religious stream. I'm not overtly religious. I don't share my religious perspectives. I've mentioned that I believe in a higher power, but I don't talk about which higher power that is or how I worship that higher power or if I worship that higher power. Deism is perfectly on the table, although I have also said I'm not a deist. I'm just being consistent. So I'm not talking about any of that. And Darwin rules. So there's nothing. So of course there are many. This is a common historical misconception of Darwin, is that Darwin was completely atheistic. That's not true. And the Darwinian evolution is completely incompatible with any form of Christianity or Judaism or even Islam. Also not true. The Catholic Church accepts evolution, and some of the priests that accepted evolution were big scientists. You don't have to believe the Earth is 6,000 years old to be. It's not a requirement of Christianity. So. I wasn't trying to get you upset today, but I believe you need to learn more about the Jewish question. I really don't need to. I think you actually need to learn more about it, but okay. Do you think Israeli are native to Palestine land? Yes, some of them are. The Mizrahim in particular, but it has an ancient appeal to all Jews and all Jewish people. Native Americans are to America? A little bit, but not exactly. They obviously weren't
they were displaced many different times and sent to different areas of the world. That didn't quite happen to the Native Americans or the Aborigines. They aren't Catholic if they believe in evolution. That's not true. The Catholic Church teaches there's many Catholics who believe in evolution. There's many Christians who believe in evolution. It's not impossible. It's not incompatible. Medieval people say ate someone in a cave. They didn't have good hygiene or practices with food safety, but brown bread, fresh milk, eggs, butter, meat, and fish. What could be better for a human diet? Kind of a carnivore diet. You're right. It mentions that except the bread, the seed of life in the Bible made from space dust, I guess. Earth been about for billions of years, not thousands, as in the Bible would have you believe. Again, that is you're arguing with an interpretation, a fundamentalist interpretation of the Bible that isn't necessarily what the Bible overtly teaches. There's nowhere where it says the earth is this many years old. How did Orthodox begin? Do you mean Orthodox Jews or do you mean Orthodox Christians? Orthodox Christianity, although Orthodox Christians themselves would claim they start originally with Jesus, Orthodox Christianity is divides from Catholicism in 1054 in the Great Schism, or Catholicism divides from them, when basically the leader of the Orthodox Church excommunicates the Pope, and the Pope does the same thing to him. So, and from there, it was a divide that was already centuries in the making through cultural and religious and worship and liturgical, that's the form of worship, differences that had been growing over time. It just needed more water. Sadly, it was not safe. Yeah, they drank people. That's common in all of human history. That's why the Egyptians let their children drink beer. The water of the Nile was important, but it wasn't always clean. Do you think Caligula was really crazy, or do you think that he was written in a negative light by the people in power? I think he was probably pretty crazy. I think there's definitely, there's something that appeals to me that, yeah, Suetonius and Tacitus probably, and Pliny and all of these guys probably exaggerated a decent amount, but they didn't exaggerate over the top, that there was a lot of truth based on it. Herodotus did the same thing, Thucydides, Eusebius, if we're talking about church history. Yeah. No, Curly, you're not listening. And using all caps doesn't help you out. You went to the Donald Trump school of talking to people, apparently. But the truth of the matter is that there is no claim in the Bible or in even the earliest Christian teachings that the earth is only a few thousand years old. And that's true. Darwin was gifted for his time, but not extensively knowledgeable by today's scientific standards, the same way Freud isn't by modern psychological standards. What are your favorite films? If we're talking history films, I mentioned some already, Braveheart, Schindler's List. I need to think of some more. Beckett is a fantastic film, Dr. Zhivago. These are not only great films, they're relatively historically accurate, they get people into the genre, and they are entertaining. Of course, Oppenheimer, 1917, great films, if we're talking history. And of course, there's also Forrest Gump, which isn't historical, but has a lot of history in it, so I find, of course, that's just a great movie in general. That's all. Yeah, there's theological differences between Orthodox and Christians. That's true, Corn. Sartha, hello. Any historian would tell you Palestinians were seafaring peoples, barbarians, most likely from Crete or near. You're thinking of Philistines. Palestinia was a renaming of it based on a play on words of the Philistines in order to insult the Jewish people after they were kicked out of Judea by the Romans in the 2nd century. What do you do for a living? Partially this. Let me see. The underhanded comments about Trump only fuel the case that you are, in fact, a leftist. People can guess whatever they want. I make underhanded comments about the left, and I make underhanded comments about the right all the time. And according to Harry, I'm far on the right, even though Harry is incorrect about that. I don't share my political perspectives. People have been guessing at them for a long time, and nobody quite knows. My job is to talk about history, and there is politics in history, but something that politicians and a lot of people here clearly don't understand is there's also history in politics. That's why I talk about it, but I don't talk about it ad nauseum, and I only want to go in depth on it for remuneration. Does what frustrate you? It does, but it's not accurate. But for me, I actually get more mad with a movie that's inaccurate to a book than to a movie that's inaccurate to history, because history has it brings people into the topic when people are usually bored by history. I haven't seen Waterloo. I should probably see it. And of course, I need to see Napoleon by Ridley Scott. Thank you, Kay. I really appreciate it. I'm sure you're chill and intelligent too. Let me see here. Sherrill, what are you talking about? Never seen him with his makeup gone, but at least he has his pen. Okay, thanks. Are you talking about me? That's weird. But it's good to see you. Palestinian was a name by Emperor Hadrian to insult the Jews. Yes. I think you are center right, but you are fair to everyone. You can keep guessing, but not going to say yes or no. I would also highly recommend Death by Lightning, which is about President Garfield. It's brilliant. Sounds good. I should watch that. Thank you, Harry. How many countries did the British Empire rule and robbed? Dozens. Let's see. I'll just name a few off the top of my head. South Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, Egypt, India, Pakistan, if we're going by modern standards, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the United States, at least the 13 colonies of the United States, Ireland, Bermuda, Jamaica, Guyana, British Guyana. Did I mention Ghana yet? If not, Ghana, Sudan. I don't know if they ever got to Eritrea, Somalia, Palestine. Yeah, those are just a few. They didn't directly rule the Palestinians, though. Which, at that time, by the way, when I say Palestinians, that does refer to Jews, because the Jews who lived in there called themselves Palestinians, too. But to be fair to the British Empire, it wasn't all just take, butcher and steal and abuse. There was a lot of cultural exchange between these two groups, and a lot of British sophistication, technological advances, and educational opportunities were in fact given to the areas that they colonized. It wasn't one or the other. And a lot of people, a lot of countries actually enjoyed being part of the British Empire. Yeah, John Wayne is Genghis Khan. I want to see that just because it'll be funny. And I love John Wayne movies. They're really entertaining. During the pandemic, I watched them because they were like candy. But, I mean, he's not, even the historical westerns he does are not accurate. But, I mean, the guy was acting 60 years ago. Why do Orthodox Christians seem to have more and longer religious holidays than every other religion ever? Very, very worship and liturgical based, from what I understand, and maybe that has something to do with it. The more liturgically based a church becomes, the more holidays it has. The Catholic Church has tons of holidays that Protestants don't have, if you're looking at the United States. Ethiopia. The British never got to Ethiopia. Gladiator 2 kind of sucked, and I have nothing but bad things about the employment. I think Ridley Scott may have lost his magic. We'll see. I'll have to watch it. You agree with Tommy Robinson or dislike him? Are you talking about the British guy who's anti-Muslim? I'm not going to share my perspective on that. I can go into more detailed analysis of the cultural clash between Muslims and Brits if you want, but for a super chat. And remember, like I said yesterday, a huge reason why there are so many Muslims migrating to the West isn't just because the West has the high standards of living, the economic opportunities, and the cultural improvements that many Middle Eastern countries do have, which I would assent that they do, but because of a destabilization of those areas by the efforts of Western powers, empires, and later the United States' hegemonic war on terror did a lot to destabilize those areas, which brought the migrants. So, do you support LG HDV? Well, I love HGTV, so there you go. Favorite historical fact about Canada. Canada did not get fully independent from the British until the 1980s. That one is mind-boggling, even though they had an independent rule for 150 years before that. Sure, I'm sure you are, Refsan. Let me see. Italy was defeated badly. That's true. To rescue the hostages, since they used the British Indian armies. True. What about Hassan Piker? Italy never got to Ethiopia also. They got their butts kicked. That's true. I am hyped for the Odyssey movie. I love what he did with Oppenheimer. Nick Fuentes said white people come from Roman Empire. Is it true? Nick Fuentes should not talk about history. But there were plenty of white people in the Roman Empire, sure. I don't know what the heck that means. Caucasians are Roman? No, there were Caucasians long before the Roman Empire. And of course, those were the Latin peoples that were predominantly Roman. I like the Romans putting coins in the mouths of the people and then burning them and thinking the coin would get them with Chiron, and he would take them to cross the river. Cuba has invaded Australia. I think that's true. Let me see. Is there anything else? The British did commit a lot of horrible crimes and terrible things. Yeah. It wasn't one way for India. Am I Hungarian? You can guess. I'm not going to share exactly my ethnicity, but I'm an American. Do you believe in Jesus Christ? I believe he existed. I'm not going to share my religious perspectives beyond that. What do you think of the Ghana Empire? Really underrated, needs to be talked about more, how rich and wealthy and powerful many African kingdoms like the Congo and the Ghana were. Rena, there you go. There were white people everywhere. Yep. Irvton, Nick Fuentes. Yeah. All right, I think I'm done here. We went over an hour, a few minutes over, just because you guys had great questions. Favorite country's flag? That's a great one. Ooh, I'm trying to think of a really dope flag. The Mexican flag is really cool, with the legend of the eagle and the cactus. That one's really really cool. The Russian imperial flag, similar. I like flags with birds on them, I guess. And yes, Jesus was indeed a rabbi. That would be very valuable to find a chair Jesus made. But yes, there you go. Favorite flag, good question. The Welsh flag is great. I love the Irish flag. I thank you for subscribing, David Matthew. I really appreciate that. Is there some paganism in the Bible, like Trinity taken from pagan Trinity and Christmas taken from paganism? No, Christmas wasn't even. The Bible doesn't even say when Christmas was. There are amalgamations of pagan celebrations with Catholic, especially Catholic, because they dominate Western Europe for a long time, that eventually weave their way into Christian tradition, like Christmas being on December 25th. There is combinations. The Discord will come soon. Once I have a new laptop, that's going to help me with that. But yeah, thank you, historian. Always a pleasure. I do need some chapstick. Thank you for reminding me. I actually did a video once. It was really popular. A lot of people were pointing out that I had chapped lips that day, so I made a revenge video explaining the history of chapstick to all of the fools. Favorite food? Shrimp. What would you like to know about the Orthodox Church? What else do you think of it? It's fascinating. It's really interesting. People in the West don't know enough about it, but that's true for almost every Eastern thing. Do you like history of people most, or do you like pre-human history? I like human history because, for me, there's the social experiment. So I'm a social scientist. Regional flags are very cool. What would let me see here. Yeah, dude, I think you would. I think you would really like to calm that you would find in the Orthodox Church. You seem nervous about Jesus. Jesus doesn't do that. Well, thank you for your. I'll take that in the spirit that it's given. Thank you for your kind words. I assume you're trying to be kind, but I'm not nervous about talking about Jesus. I'm not nervous about any topic that I discuss. I have a master's and bachelor's in history, and I have studied it all my life on a casual front. Were the Israelites Jews? Yes. Favorite historical era? 19th, 20th, 18th century history of Europe, in particular the Russians. Do you think you'd enjoy eating elephant birds? I don't know. I don't want to even try. Okay, I caught up to the chat. I'm at 70 minutes. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. But I love every type of history, though, Jeremy. So, yeah. I am not Jewish, but thank you for the compliment. There are many, many handsome Jews. We will vote on this week's live stream lecture. I've just got to put up a poll. The Gupta were before the Byzantines were more advanced, even proportionally. A good question, Jaden. Nobody knows about the Gupta Empire in India in the same time as the birth of Christ. So, all right, take care, everybody. I will be back tomorrow for the live stream lecture, 4 p.m. Eastern. You can vote on it exclusively here on YouTube. Please like and subscribe. Check out the long-form videos and the short-form videos. Anything you can do to help this channel, I really appreciate. Always great to see you guys. I hope you have a really, really great rest of your Saturday. We went early, so you guys all over the world could join us, and we got people from Ceylon, so that was pretty fun, or Sri Lanka, I should say. Oh, Tai, so good to see you, but we're at the end. We're headed out. So, well, keep looking. I'm not Jewish. I have a lot of I know a lot of Jewish men, but I'm not a Jewish myself. All right, have a great rest of. But Tai, it's so good to see you because you're a longtime friendly neighborhood historian. Taib, do you have a question about history? I will answer one from you. Just to wrap up, just to show everyone who's listening how much I care about my subscribers and how good it is to see them. But yeah. Taib, any questions? Anything I can answer for you right now? Wait for the next stream, bro. Okay, well, come tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern, and we usually have a little bit of Q&A at the end of that. So. Yeah, well, I don't have the Instagram here. You can slide in the DMs on Instagram, Friendly History on TikTok. That's the usual way you can do all of that stuff. So yeah, I hope you guys take care and have a great rest of your day. I'll see you tomorrow for the live stream lecture, and first time lecture on TikTok tomorrow at 4, or sorry, Monday at 4. So back-to-back live streams, one on YouTube tomorrow at 4, and then Monday on TikTok at 4. But yeah, have a great rest of your day, guys. Take care. And as always, love history. Bye-bye now.